Hello and welcome to a new Google Sheets tutorial and a little bit of Google Apps script today in Practical Sheets. Today we're going to talk about FIFO, first in, first out. This is a method of costing for our inventories to make sure that we have the exact cost of our inventories. I have done some videos in the past with a little bit of criticism because they were not perfect. They had some flaws. It involved having an additional sheet, some very complex formulas. So today I think I found a much better method in Google Sheets using formulas and using a very small Google Apps script code. So I hope you like it, and I know that many of you that see this video are much better versed in inventories, so you can tell me if what is missing. I know this model lacks a couple of things that I mentioned at the end, but I think this will be a great starting point for better costs in your inventory. So I hope you like it. And if you don't want to hear me out for 20-30 minutes, you can go to the Patreon page and download these and more than 150 templates. And you can support me a lot. If not, just subscribe to the channel, commenting below what the model is lacking, or just thumbs up to the video helps a lot. So with a special thanks to my Patreons, let's begin. This is part 4 of our inventory series that started in 2023. Today we're going to talk about FIFO costing. So we've already done our tables. Well, I'm not going to start from scratch because it would take too long. So just going to tell you that I have 5 counting the dashboard, but 4 basic sheets. One where I have the product listed with their cost. One where I have the purchases with the date, everything is purchased, how many units, the cost per unit and the total cost, and finally the sales, where I also have the name, the reference if needed, the date, and how many units I have sold. And finally I have the inventory, where it's just a summary where I just subtract the units sold from the units bought, and I bring a cost. If you saw the last video that I strongly suggest you to, you saw that the cost is an estimate, an approximate. It's very difficult just with a formula to know the exact cost. This is what we're going to do today. I think that I have tried in the past, not that successfully, with some formulas. So today, I think I found the best way for me to do it. It's a mix of formulas and a bit of code. First, I'm going to do everything with formulas and some manual input, and then we're going to do the code. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's begin very quickly. So I'm going to explain you what we're going to do. In order to correctly cost our inventory, we need to do it batch by batch. In our example, I have 2 products, just gummy bears and chocolate bars, and I have bought gummy bears 3 times in 3 different dates with 3 different costs. So when I do a costing, as we did in the last video, doing average or finding the first one or the last one is not accurate. You should do cost line by line, batch by batch. Basically what you should do is go to these gummy bears and say, hey, how many units in inventory are from this batch? Okay, 5, perfect. 5 times 25, this is 125, perfect. Next one, let's go to the second one. How many batches units you have left? All of them, 2, perfect. At 10.5, this is 21 plus the 125 and that, and you start adding up and adding up. And if, for example, you have this first one and it does not have any unit in inventory, then it's 0, and then you go to the next one. So this is what the theory of FIFO cost. FIFO means first in, first out. This means that the first batch I buy by date is the first one I'm going to sell. This is very important to know that we're going to be based in this methodology, and that I think is one of the most used. So in order to do this, first I need to identify each batch. That I think the easiest way to identify it is by the date. So I don't need to add an additional column with number of batch. I think this is adding unnecessary noise. The only manner in which this wouldn't work is if you buy the same day different batches at different costs. But I think this is just a minority. Normally you're going to buy in different dates, so this means that the date will be my identifier of the batch. So, well, actually we have 2, the name of the product or the reference if you prefer, and the date. Okay, These two will be the unique identifier of each batch. Now, what I need to know is for each batch to know how many units total that I already have it here are the units that I bought. I bought 5, I bought 2, I bought 20, I bought 10, but I want to know how many do I have left. These 5, maybe I have left 3, maybe I have left 2, maybe I have none left. Okay? In order to do this, one of the main points of this video or of this system is that in sales, I need to associate every sale to a batch. So when I sell my first gummy bear, I need to add a new field. So I'm going to add it to the right, and I'm going to call it this batch. For now, we're going to leave it manually. This is the part I'm doing some spoilers. This is the part where we're going to do code at the end of the video, but for now we're going to do manually. So let's say my first purchase, I have 3 batches of gummy bears. Knowing that this is first in, first out, and assuming that this is ordered, then I will say, okay, gummy bears, the first one, the batch will be 18th of January. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. Again, this will be done manually at the beginning, but then we'll do a code for it. And then I'm going to buy another set of gummy bears, 2, and again, the same batch. Maybe I could add this as a date, so it's easier. And now I have my first step. That is giving each sale a batch number. Now that I have this, it will be easier for me to do a formula where I know how many units I have used of each batch. So I could go, I'm going to insert a column to the right. I'm going to call this consumption or usage or whatever. And what I need to know, I need to add all of the gummy bears from this batch. This is done with a SUMIFS function. So let's do this, SUMIFS. The first thing I need to know is where am I going to sum. So in my sales, I'm going to sum in the units column. And if you're not familiar with tables, I urge you to see some of my videos in tables. But the nice thing about tables is that if I choose all of my rows inside the table, I will get a nice new notation, table notation, where I have the name of the table and then the name of the field. I don't like this table one. I'm going to change it in a bit. So, comma. Now, what are the conditions I need? The first condition is that the name should be this name. And the second condition is that the batch, table 1 batch, is this date. Let's hit enter. And now I have 3 because it has gone here and add the 3 ones for gummy bears from 18th of January. Okay. I'm going to change the name of this table 1 to sales, so everything looks a bit nicer. So the formula makes a lot of sense. This is the nice thing about tables, that when you see a formula like this, it's very easy to know that you're selling things from the sales table and that you are looking adding units and looking for the condition that the name is something and the batch is something. It's easier than looking at just letters and numbers. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to drag this down so that it will drag automatically when I add new rows. And what I also need, that maybe I don't need an extra column for this, but I think it's easier to see, is to have the remaining units. So if I bought 5 and my consumption is 3, well, the remaining is just 2, 5 minus 3. So let's add this to the right in remaining. And it will be just a very simple formula, units minus consumption. And let's do out of it. Finally, what I could do is to have, for example, this total cost, I don't need it anymore. Actually, maybe I haven't needed any time. If you're doing this also for accounting, then maybe you will need it. But for now, I don't need it. So I'm going to, you can hide it, or I will just remove it with Ctrl-Alt-. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give this unit cost a currency format. And this consumption will be a number. And this remaining will also be a number. And Finally, I'm going to add another column to the right, and I'm going to call this cost, remaining cost. It's nothing else but multiplying these remaining units by the cost of each unit. Again, maybe we could do this directly in the inventory, but it's more clear this way. And finally, in my inventory, it's as easy as I'm going to replace all of this, and we're going to do a sum ifs. Actually, just a sum if. I'm going to sum in my purchases. I'm going to look for the name and make sure that the name is this name. And then I'm going to add just this last column I added, the remaining cost. Let's hit enter. And now it's a more exact cost, because what I'm doing is I'm going batch by batch, as I told you at the beginning, and seeing the cost of each batch and then adding it separately. So if for any reason I sell 3 more units of the batch from 1st of January, then I can see only 2, sorry. Then I could see that I don't have any remaining, and this will not add anything to my cost, because why should I add any cost to units that I don't have anymore? So this is much more accurate, but we are missing something. The thing we're missing is that doing this manually, it would be horrible. So the second part of this video, what we're going to do is to bring this batch manually, basically via a code. So let's go, extension subscript. We're going to name this code search for batch. And what we're going to do in this search for batch, first, we are going to see where the user is at. I only want to execute this function when the user has selected a new product in the sales sheet. Okay, so I need to know, identify user's location. Secondly, and very close to this, is see if it's in the location I wanted to, if it's in the sheet sales and in the column number 1. So identify user location and then confirm if it's desired location. If so, then we'll continue. If not, we'll stop. So I need 2 conditions. The first condition is the name, and the second condition is that it is an active batch. What do I mean by an active batch? A batch that has more than 0 units remaining. I could actually add another column called batch status. And we don't need it, but I think it's a bit more clear if I said that if the remaining is equals to 0, then we can call this depleted. And if not, we can call this active. That's it. Let's accept the suggestion. So now the 2 conditions are the name and that the status is active. And in this case, for example, in the gummy bears, I have 2 active, this and this. So which one I'm going to choose? The first one by date. So assuming normally this will be ordered by date. So we'll just take the first one. If not, then you will have to add another line just to make sure that this is ordered by date. So here we'll say filter purchases by name and active batches. And finally, once I know this, I'm going to bring the first date I find. Print first batch state. That's it. That's what I want to do. So it's always easy to do this pseudo algorithm, so it's then easier to code because you have a plan, a map. And well, actually the last thing I'm going to do is to include this in an onEdit function so that it executes itself automatically. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing we're going to do is to look for the active cell. That is the cell where the user has just inputted some information. So we're going to do spreadsheet up dot get active cell, get active range, sorry, and we're going to call this, stored in a variable called active cell. Then we need 3 different data points from this cell. The first thing is that the column the second is the row, and the third is the sheet. So let's do first active cell dot get column, then active cell get row, and then active cell get sheet. And we could store it in 3 variables if you want. Column, row, and sheet. Okay, very important to know that this sheet is just a sheet object, not the name of the sheet. We will need an additional method to get the name of the sheet. Now that I have identified the user's location, I could confirm if it's the desired location. I'm going to do this with an if statement, where I'm going to compare each of these 3 values. First, I'm going to make sure that the column is column number 1. That is, that the user has chosen something from here. The second condition is that the row should be higher than 1. It's just an insurance thing. Maybe you don't need to do this, but I think it's best just to make sure that you don't damage your header. So row greater than 1. And finally, we need that the sheet is the sales sheet. So sheet.getName equals to, in our case, it's called sales. Okay, if all of this is true, then we could do the following 2 steps. Let's bring down with Alt down the brackets. And so the first thing we're going to do is filter purchases by name and active batches. So I need to know the name. To know the name, I could use the active cell and another property or method of the active cell, which would be getValue. And this will be the name. And now I have the name, so I could filter by name. And now I need this data, this array, so I could filter it. So I'm going to do spreadsheet up dot get active spreadsheet, open and close parentheses, get sheet by name. I think it's called purchases. Let me confirm. Yes, perfect. Then I will do get data range. This will take the range with data. In the case that I don't have any more data, that is my recommendation. And finally, I will do get values. This converts it into an array, or just brings the value as an array. And we can call this data array or purchases array if you prefer. And now I'm going to filter them. How? With the method filter.filter. And what filter does is it goes row by row and sees if each row meets a certain condition. So I will do row and use this an arrow thingy, equals and greater than. It's called arrow type function. So it's an easier way to write a function. That's it, a callback function. And then I will say that row in position number 0. Remember that arrays, or if you didn't know, arrays start always, the first position is not position 1, but position 0. Okay, so row in position 0, I want it to be equal to name. Okay, so it only brings gummy bears. And then I want to have only the active ones. So row in the position, let's see, where do I have active? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Row in the position 8, I want it to be active, not depleted. We could also do it as 0. Remember that we don't need this batch status. We could do that the 7 remaining is greater than 0. It could also work. And I'm going to store this in a filtered array. And now that I have my filtered array, that is basically, in this case, is an array with these 2 rows, this and this. And I want the first one, because this is a FIFO system, first in, first out. So I'm going to use the first batch I have available. So I'm going to use the first batch. I'm assuming, oh, be careful, I'm assuming this is ordered. If it's not ordered, then you should do an additional thing, and that you could sort this. Okay, there are a couple of ways you could do it. Sort and just choose the date. But let's assume for now that this table will always be ordered. Okay, now I'm going to go to my filtered array in the first row, again, because I'm assuming it's ordered, and in the column number where I have the date, 0, 1, and 2, in column 2. And this will be my batch. Actually, I could take this down because I filtered purchase by name and active batches, but I forgot a step, that is the getting current batch. That is the line we just did. Let's bring it up. And now we're going to print this first batch. How are we going to do it? Knowing that we already have the sheet, there are two ways of doing it. We could use the active cell and use an offset method, or we could use the sheet and use the get range method. I think it's easier that way. It's more flexible. Let's do get range. Knowing that we already have the row, we do row, and then we need the column where the batch goes. In our case is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, when we're talking about sheets, the first position is 1. When we're talking about arrays in Google Apps Script, the first position is 0. Okay, so in this case it will be 5, and we're going to set a value, and this value will be the batch. Finally, what we're going to do is we're going to insert this function inside an onEdit function. So we make sure that it automatically executes itself every time the user is editing a cell. Let's save. Maybe you want to name the project. And let's try it out. So in this case, if I choose chocolate bars, then it should bring the batch 31st of July, not 18th of January, because this is already depleted. Let's see if it works. So let's try it. In our sales, let's hit gummy bears, and for some reason it's not working. And it happened to me before. I don't know why. I haven't been able to figure it out, but I'll let you know in the comments. But for now, the solution is not the most scientific one, but is you go out of the table, choose one, then you choose chocolate bars. For some reason inside the table, the first time it does not work. Why? I'm not really sure. And if you then choose it again, it will work. And then I choose gummy bears. Something about the table, it's not working. So just in order to be safe, what we're going to do is remove the table. So as I've told you in past videos, the tables have to be taken with a grain of salt. They won't always work, and sometimes they will conflict with some formulas, in this case with some codes. So I'm going to revert to unformatted format. Everything should work the same. There were a couple of advantages we had. The first one was that the formula dragged down automatically. So we could do this Control Shift down, Control D. And then given that XLOOKUP is such a nice formula and we already have an error, if something is empty, nothing happens. So it works perfectly. And then if I choose gummy bears here, then everything works fine. So I'm going to delete all of them so that we can try it out again. So remember, we have 3 gummy bears, 1 chocolate bar. We don't have sales here. In purchases, we have 3 gummy bears, 1 chocolate bar. Given that I deleted the table, then my formula's damaged, so I need to fix them. So these sum ifs, the first thing I need is where I'm going to sum. So I'm going to sales and I'm going to sum units. Then where I'm going to look for the name, in the A column. Again, sometimes you need to delete it first, and then you see it popping in and out. Then you know that you can go to the sales and choose A, and we're going to do the same for C. That C, if I'm not mistaken, is the date. So here in batch, let's hit enter and let's drag it down. And I think it was the only formula. The rest of them are not connected to the sales. Okay, so let's begin. Let's do gummy bears. We're going to buy 3, and it already knows that it will be from the batch from 18th of January. 18th of January. I have 2 remaining, so I'm going to buy 2, and still will be first 18th of January. And now if I go to purchases, now this is remaining 0. Then I go to gummy bears again, and next time it won't bring 18th of January, but 25th of January, because it's the next available one, the first active one. Remember, the first active one that has 2. And if I buy 2 from it and then I try it again, then it will go to the next one, and so on and so forth. This is not perfect. This has some errors. I'm going to put this manually as we did in the past. Maybe do a couple of fixes. Maybe we could have a validation here. Data validation. This one, we should leave it just for D. And then we should create one for E2 up to E. And it will be a valid date. Given that we have 2 dates, is valid, so we can remove one and then go to the original one and add a new range. You can add this E2 up to E, then hit OK. So this has a couple of things to improve. The first one is, let's say that let's go back to, let's delete this one. So we know that we have 2 remaining from the next batch of gummy bears, okay, the one from 25th of January. What if I want to buy 3? So let's say gummy bears, and it brings the 25th of January, and I'm going to say I will buy 3. So it's allowing me to buy 3, and then I'm going to have a mistake because this will be negative. How do we solve this? First, we need to get the remaining. So it's very similar to this. We are going to add another variable that it will be called remaining, and it will be filtered array, position 0, and then in the column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Let's go back to this before we had the 3. So this was 2. And now I'm going to, maybe what we could do is just set an alert. Say you only have 2 left from this, okay? So we could do spreadsheet up dot get UI dot alert. Say keep in mind that you only have remaining left, so plus remaining left units of the current batch. That is enough. At least I think it's we could do it much more advanced, but for now it's a good reminder that you can just have 2. Let's try it out. I forgot the plus here. Let's save it, and we're going to remove this one, and let's do it. Gummy bears. So keep in mind that you only have 2 units left, sorry, of the current batch units left. Again, we could do it more complex, that if you add 3, then you can have 2 from this one and 1 for the other one. It's just an alert, and we could do it more rigid, but for now I think this could work as a first measure. Okay, so now I know I could do 1 or do 2. Let's see, we do 1, and then we do gummy bears again. And keep in mind that you only have 1 unit left for the current batch. So I will do 1, and then here, and then let's do gummy bears again. Okay, now you only have 10 units from the current batch. The current batch right now is 10, 10. What happens if I buy 10 and then I don't have anything left because I don't have further batches? The last batch I have is 10, 10. So I'm going to buy 10. And what happens when I do gummy bears again? So nothing is happening. I'm sure I'm going to have an error. So let's go to executions. So let's see here. And the thing is that it's returning an empty string. This means there are no batches left. So what we could do is another alert. So what I could do is, before all of this, I could say if purchases array filter blah 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 blah, if all of these return something, then I'm going to do all of this. If not, so else, then I'm going to do something similar to this, an alert that says there are no available units for this product. Let's see if it works. Let's save and let's try it again. Apparently it does not work. Let me see. So it is entering. So what I could do is take this filter array, put it on top, and then I'm going to say if filtered array, because it is returning something. It is returning an array, but an array with no elements. So I could say that if filter array length equals to 0, this means it is a valid array, because how I had it before was that this was not valid. Actually, this is valid. It's not returning null, it's returning empty. So we could do it with this. If filter array length greater than 0, so greater than 0 is that it found a valid batch. So it will do everything we did at the beginning. If not, there is no valid batch, and we should alert the user that there is no valid batch. Let's do it again. Let's delete this, and let's again, gummy bears. There are no available units for this product. Okay? The weird thing is that if I delete it, I will also have this. So let's see. Maybe I have to say that if, let's say else if name is different than empty, so that I don't have this advice when it's empty. Let's save and let's do it again. So here there are no available units for this product, but if I delete it, I shouldn't receive anything. Perfect. And if I do another one, chocolate bars, keep in mind that you only have 20 units left of the current batch. Just a thing to keep in mind is that this won't work on the cell phone. Okay, this especially this last part of the pop-ups won't work on the cell phone. So that's it. I think we did it. The inventory should stay the same. We're just summing the remaining cost. Perfect. What we could do is do in the dashboard. I think we already included the inventory cost, so nothing weird here. So I know many of you know much more about costing and FIFO than me. So just take it to a spin, try it out, and let me know if it works. Again, for example, this alert part could work better. We could do a bit more complex code where if I ask for 10 and I have 5 in this first batch and 5 in the second batch, it would be able to take but from each batch. But this is a much more complex code, so we could do it maybe in a special course or something like that. But for now, I think this will help a lot with your costing. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you especially to my Patreons, and see you in the next video.